Hi everyone, this is Sarah and welcome to Salmond. Today I'll be making this candy corn gnome from a styrofoam cone, some felt, and a child's wig from Dollar Tree. Fair warning, you will see me struggle with the hair as I tried to make it work on this corny little guy. He did turn out cute though, so it was well worth the effort in the end. If you like what you see here, please be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification button below. If you know anyone that would like this video or my channel, please be sure to share this link because every view and every subscriber really helps enable me to keep creating videos for you. And if you'd like to see more of what I do, you can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, or take a look at my blog. The links are in the description below. There are a few supplies you'll need to make this candy corn gnome. The first is the styrofoam cone. I picked this up at Dollar Tree, but you can find them at most craft stores. I've seen them at Walmart. Any place that have a craft section, you're most likely to find one of these small cones. I also picked up this hair in the children's section of Dollar Tree. I picked up some baby booties, and these were in the party favor section, also at Dollar Tree. I have a wooden bead, some Waverly chalk paint in pumpkin, and the colors that I used were yellow, white, and orange, your basic candy corn colors. Now here I'm laying out the baby booties, and I'm going to take my styrofoam cone and I'm just going to push it down over the top of the baby booties. And what I'm doing here is trying to give myself an idea where I want those baby booties situated in the cone later after I paint them. So as you can see, they do stick in pretty well without glue, but I am going to want to glue them in later just to make sure that they stay in place. All right, now here you can see that I did leave the indents for the boots to be placed back in after they've been painted. And the idea behind this was I didn't want to have to scratch the paint up and scratch them off the booties after I had actually painted them. I ended up giving each of the booties 3 coats of the Waverly chalk paint, allowing it to dry in between. And I did not film the entire process, but I will tell you I did use my heat gun to kind of speed up the process of drying the paint a little bit. I'm not a patient person, so I definitely want to use the help where I can get it to speed the process along when I can. Next, I am going to take my cone, which is about 6 inches long, and I'm going to measure out at the 2-inch mark and the 4-inch mark so that I have my cone divided into thirds so I can put my felt on in the candy corn colors of orange, yellow, and white. Now I'm simply going to take a marker and make the marks directly onto the cone. I'm not worried about them showing up. It will be covered up completely by the felt once we get that glued on. And I am also going to turn my cone and I'm going to mark it in 3 or 4 places around the cone to make sure once I'm placing my felt that I am keeping it level all the way around. Now it's time to go ahead and start adding the felt. I don't have a pattern laid out for my cone in order to cut the felt. So what I'm going to do is just line my cone up with the corner of the felt and then start rolling it. And as I roll it and find where it comes together on the cone, I'm going to start marking it with, again, my orange Sharpie. And then once I get it marked and unrolled, then I will go ahead and start cutting it. And I'm going to do this for the orange, the yellow, and the white pieces. And it's kind of hard to explain what I'm doing, but you'll be able to follow along as you watch how I'm going ahead and marking these pieces. For the next step, what I'm going to do is use some tacky glue as well as some hot glue to adhere the felt to the cone itself. Starting with the largest piece, which is the orange, I'm going to work on the bottom, and I'm going to hot glue the vertical edge so that it holds in place while I am pulling and adjusting the felt the rest of the way around the cone, and using the Aleene's tacky glue to hold the felt firmly in place as I continue working around the cone. And again, I'm going to do this with all three colors, the orange, the yellow, and the white. Now that I have everything glued down, I am going around and I'm simply pulling on the felt a little bit to be sure that that bottom edge is nice and level and you're not seeing any of the styrofoam at the bottom. And here there are a few markings from the pen as I was going through and making my own pattern. I should have turned this around to the back side. I didn't think about it at the time, but I'm not worried about it because we will cover that up later. As for the overlap here on the back side, I'm just taking a straight edge knife and I am going to just very gently score along the edge of the felt, and it's a little hard to cut through, so you'll see me take my scissors and just trim that up so it's nice and even. Now that I have this all trimmed up and nice and even, I'm going to go back over my cone and I am going to repeat this for the next two steps with the yellow and the white. Now I'm going to go back in using some of the grosgrain ribbon that I have. It's a fairly thin ribbon, but it's plenty wide enough to cover the seams that we have and hide all those markings that I made with the pen. So I'm just going to go ahead and use my hot glue gun. I have a very small tip on the glue gun that I normally use, so I won't be putting too much of the glue out. And I'm just going to cover the orange yellow transition with the orange grosgrain ribbon. And I'm going to be covering the yellow to white transition with the yellow grosgrain ribbon. Now, at this point, I decided to add a couple little wiggle eyes as well as the wooden bead, so I would have, well, some eyes for him, just in case they showed through the hair. So what I'm going to do again is just use my hot glue gun and just put a couple dots of hot glue where the wiggle eyes are going to go, as well as, once they're placed, I'm going to go ahead and glue the nose on directly under them. And what I end up with is something that looks like Beaker from the Muppets all dressed up as a candy corn for Halloween. Now it's time to add the hair. Now, I'll be quite honest with you, this did not go as planned. I thought this would be great hair to add the beard to the gnome as well as his hair, but um, it really didn't go to plan because, as you can see here, I'm kind of trying to figure out how I'm going to get this hair to stay together once I cut it. The first thing I planned on doing was using some hot glue. So I smoothed it out here so I could put some hot glue on it, and hopefully that would hold it together. So I put some hot glue on both sides of the hair. It's holding together okay, but it is not pretty. So I went ahead and cut it off above the glue line. And at this point, I laid it over the gnome just to see how it would look, how far it would hang down, and if it was something that could be covered up or used at all. I decided that the hot glued hair could be used. Um, it was salvageable simply because the hot glued portion of the hair would be covered by the gnome's hat. So I am just going to run a bead of hot glue around the top of the gnome's head and hot glue the hair to the gnome itself. All right, so that turned out okay, knowing that that hot glue would be covered by his hat when we were done. I wasn't too upset by that. However, as far as the beard is concerned, this is not going to be a method that is going to work for the piece that goes under his nose, because that hot glue will definitely show both through his hair and under the nose itself. So it is definitely time to come up with a plan B for the beard. So for plan B, I needed to try a different method of attaching the hair. I decided I would try Filene's tacky glue since it was more fluid. Maybe it would run down through the hair and I could put a thinner line down. It would hold it better and it dries clear, so they say. But let's just say that did not go according to plan whatsoever. And I'll be honest with you guys, at this point, I was about ready just to give up on this project and chuck it all in the trash. But I decided to try one last thing and melt the hair together since they were cheap nylon fibers. So, using a silicone mat, I just took my lighter and patiently and slowly ran it back and forth under the glue line to see if I could melt those fibers together. And I'll tell you, it did take a little while, but it did work. I wasn't sure I was happy with the outcome at the time, but I gave it a chance, and this method was the one that worked the best out of all three of them. Okay, so here is the beard, and as you can see, it's not too discolored. Everything is melted together. It looks a lot better than this glued piece did. So it is ready to go on the gnome. I'm really pretty happy with it. It could have come out a lot worse in the end, even though it's a little bit rough on the top edge. but I can cover that up by making a little mustache for my gnome. Now I'm just going to trim up the bottom of his beard so it looks just a little bit neater. Now it's time to put the beard on the gnome. Now I've got kind of a lump right in the middle of it, so I'm just trying to figure out how to lay it out so that it makes sense under his nose. I decided just to trim a piece off of it in the end so that it laid more evenly, because you can see it's just sticking out on one side or the other. So I am going to cut it down a little bit, and then I'm just going to hot glue it right up under his nose. Now for the mustache, I cut a short piece of hair off of the wig. I had plenty of hair left, and I'm just going to take one piece that's a little bit longer than the mustache itself, and I'm going to tie it off in the middle using this strand of hair here, and I'm just going to twist it around on itself a little bit so that it's a little bit tighter and easier to work with. And then again, it's going to go right around the center of the hair in order to make the mustache. And I'm just going to tie it in a double knot and secure it with some hot glue. Now it's time to trim up the mustache a little bit, and then it'll be ready to glue using hot glue right up under the gnome's nose. I wanted to add a little bit more character to the gnome, so I tore the braid off of the top of the headband. And once I did, it started wanting to unravel all by itself pretty quickly. So I decided to take some of the yellow grosgrain ribbon and tie it off so that the gnome could have a couple braided pieces in his hair. Once I had the braid tied off, it's simply a matter of hot gluing it to the top of the gnome's head. Then we'll be ready to move on and start making his hat. For the hat itself, I decided to use just the yellow and the white because we have an awful lot of orange on our gnome so far already. And I am just going to wrap it loosely around to figure out about the width that I'm going to need of the felt. And right now it looks like I'm going to cut off about 1.5 inches of the piece of felt that I have left. And then I am going to go ahead and cut right along the top area where you can kind of see the scraps have been cut out of it already. And that's going to be the piece of felt I'm using for the bottom of the hat. For the white felt, I'm just going to lay it up against the yellow piece that I've cut to measure the width. And then I am going to just cut up a bit on the white felt because I do want it to be a little bit longer than the yellow, but not too much. And then I'm going to lay them out so that they're butted up against each other. And I'm going to use my hot glue gun to glue these two pieces together at the seam. And this will be the back side. And as you will see, as I'm doing this, I'm going to kind of wiggle my glue gun back and forth because I do have a narrow tip on it. I do want to get the glue on both sides far enough in that it will hold them together. I don't want them coming apart at the seams, but this is not really going to get any heavy use, so the hot glue itself will be plenty strong enough to hold this together. Now that the hot glue has had a couple minutes to cool down, I'm going to go ahead and flip it over, and as you can see, it held together just fine. And what I'm going to use in between the two to disguise the seam is this white ribbon that's just a little bit wider than the ribbon I used before. And I'm just going to hot glue this down to cover that seam up and give it a nice finished edge. Now it's time to fit the hat around the gnome's head. So what I'm going to do is kind of lay it out around his head where I want the hat to come down to. And in the end, I decided I did want it to sit on his nose, so those eyes were not important to put on there at all. But hey, we all know it's Beaker under there, don't we? Now here I'm just playing with the piece of felt. I'm trying to decide how tall I want his hat to be and exactly how I want it to look when it's on him. And I decided that I am going to go ahead and fold over the yellow a couple times to make a nice little brim for his hat, little rim there. And I'm just going to hot glue that down. That'll do two things. One, that'll shorten the overall height of the hat, and it'll give it a little more character as well. Now I'm going to put some hot glue over the felt. I'm going to fold it over. I'm going to roll it over a second time to add a little more character. Hot glue that as well. Then I'm going to hot glue the center of the felt piece right over his nose so that that stays in place and doesn't move around on us. Once that is hot glued in place, I'm going to turn him over and I'm going to pull the hat down a little bit further in the back than it is in the front so that it looks like it's coming down over the back of his head. Hot glue the two yellow pieces together. Once that has cooled and it has a solid hold, I'm going to start working on the rest of the hat. Now I'm simply going to start working with the felt, turning the hat into a cone shape. So you can see I'm kind of trimming down at an angle as I work it. And I'm going to do this a few times until I get the cone shape that I like. And as I get it worked from the bottom up toward the top, I'm also going to be using the hot glue to attach it together to hold that shape that I'm looking for. For the last step, I decided that I wanted my gnome's hat to kind of flip over on the top and hang down, and I wanted a little bit tassel coming out of it. But I wanted the tassel to look kind of rough and still tie in with the rest of the gnome. So I took the orange, white, and yellow grosgrain ribbon that I had, and I'm just cutting, about an inch, inch and a half strips, and I'm cutting several of these so that I can make a little pom-pom out of these. And I know it's going to take a little bit of work to get it so that it's just kind of poofy with this ribbon because it's going to want to all bunch together, but I think it'll be really cute when it's done. Now that I have all my ribbon pieces cut, I'm simply going to lay them out over a piece of the grosgrain and white that's maybe 3-4 inches long, and I'm going to use this to tie them all together. And to do this, I'm simply going to tie a double knot, and then I'm going to use a small bead of hot glue just to hold that knot into place so it doesn't slip or loosen up on me. Once that is done, I'm simply going to start bending and working with the little pieces of ribbon that are tied so that they form more of a tassel shape. And like I said, this is going to take just a little bit of work to it. I'm going to have to bend them a little bit and get them out of shape, but it will turn out really cute fairly soon. Now through this process, I did end up using just a couple small beads of hot glue just to kind of hold the pom-pom pieces together because they weren't wanting to move quite as well as I wanted to on their own. Now finally we're ready for that finishing touch, and that is to attach our tassel to the top of the hat. I am trimming down that long piece of the grosgrain ribbon that I tied the tassel with, and I'm just laying it in and hot gluing it inside the very top of the hat. Once that is done, I am simply going to bend that hat over a little bit at the top. Once I have it folded to my liking, I'm going to add just another bead of hot glue to hold that fold in place so it doesn't pop up or move, because it does want to pop up there quite a bit. And then once we get that done, we are all ready to put the shoes on our gnome. Now, if you remember at the beginning of the video, I showed how I pushed the shoes in to the bottom of the cone a little bit so I didn't have an idea where I wanted them to go. It did not work out that way because the front of the gnome was not where the front of the shoes originally went. So I did make new holes to put the shoes in, and it really didn't scratch up that chalk paint. I've got to give that chalk paint props. It really does work well with plastic. And I just glued the shoes in so that our little gnome can have some feet to stand on. And he is all done and ready to go. I love the way he turned out. It was a bunch of trial and error, and it was actually more error than trial, I think, in the end. But I do like the way he turned out. I think he's really cute when all is said and done.
Okay, guys, here he is. I think I'm naming him Corny the Candy Gnome because, all in all, he is pretty corny. And I'll be honest with you, this Dollar Tree wig hair was so hard to work with. It was all I had on hand at the time to make his beard and hair with, and I almost gave up. But in the end, I'm glad I didn't. I really liked the way he came out, all in all. He was the very first gnome I've ever attempted. I did enjoy making him for the most part, and I'll be making some more gnomes in the near future because I do love the aesthetic they give. They're kind of a friendly little addition to any decor. So let me know what you think. If you have any ideas on how to make this wig hair from Dollar Tree any easier to work with, just let me know. And if you'd like to see any other crafts on my channel, please be sure to let me know that as well. I will see you soon for the next craft. Bye-bye.
If you liked this video, please be sure to hit that like button as well as share it with friends who may also enjoy it. If you like my channel, hit that subscribe button, and when the notification bell pops up, be sure you hit that as well so you never miss a video. And, as always, have a great day and stay crafty.